Imagine waking up from a coma to find your lover not only taking care of you, but also protecting you and your unborn child. Chapter 37. Paying his debt. Around a week after I woke up from my coma, Thane allowed me to move around on my own. Since I woke up, Archie has been taking care of me non-stop, even though I could tell he was exhausted and still recovering from his death experience. Every night I would wake up to see him wide awake and looking as if he was ready to fight anyone who dared to harm me and our baby, and I would always have to coax him to go to sleep. I appreciated his protectiveness, but he was starting to worry me when I noticed how tired he looked day by day. He made sure I was comfortable every second of the day by having my meals brought to me in bed, ensuring Dr. Adler was only seconds away and keeping an eye on me whenever I moved a muscle. When he finally gave me back my independence, my first request was to go visit our fallen friends' graves. I picked 60 pink carnations from the garden in the backyard before Thane and I drove to where they buried pack members. The cemetery was a huge piece of land that went on for miles and miles, and generations of wolves have been laid to rest here. The area was absolutely quiet and serene with a feeling of peace. Thane wrapped his arm around me as we approached the graves that were freshly placed, and I couldn't help but feel agony from both my own emotions and the Ness. Thane knew these people his entire life, and I could tell he was affected by their deaths much more than he was leading on. I've only known them for a few months, but they were family. They accepted me wholeheartedly without reservations and treated me with respect. And what happened in return? My lunatic of an ex-boyfriend came along to their home and slaughtered them. There was no way I would ever forgive myself for that day, but for their sake, I would try to live for them all and protect the pack from any other person who tried to harm us. I soaked in each wolf's name to memory as I placed a carnation on each of their grave. When I stood before Delilah's grave, I broke down. I fell to my knees before her headstone as I recalled our brief but strong friendship. Thane disappeared as he gave me a moment alone to try and gather my thoughts and have a moment to thank them all. "I'm sorry to all of you." I wiped my tears away and went on. "If I hadn't been brought here, or if I was a better Luna then, maybe you all would be here today with your families. I should have been there that day to protect you all, and I wasn't. For that I'm truly sorry. I just wished I could have protected you all as you all protected me." A gentle sweep of the wind was my only response, and I hoped that if they could hear me and forgive me for putting them in danger. I closed my eyes and sent a silent prayer to the moon goddess to watch over their souls. After saying my piece, I rose to my feet and dusted my parts off before I heard a voice behind me. "You can't blame yourself forever," Thane gently said. "Maybe I can, Henry." I cut him off. "I really don't want to fight with you, but I'm not going to blame myself fully. It was partially my fault, but I know that in order to forgive, even if it's myself, that something in me will forever hold myself accountable." I turned towards him, right into his open arms. "Your ear's stubborn as a mule. Then let's hope our baby comes out like you," I whispered as Thane's focus shifted to my little bump. I was about 4 weeks pregnant, but considering werewolf babies grow at twice the speed, it was equivalent to being 8 weeks along. "Hell be a little bit for both of us." Thane pecked my lips before he led us back to the Jeep. As I buckled up, I turned to face Thane. "I think it's time we go visit him." He gave me a weary look. "I don't think you're ready yet. I've been ready since I woke up. You can't keep me from facing him forever, Thane. I just think that you should rest some more before you decide what happened." I took his hand into my own. "I know what has to be done. He took our friends and family from us." He looked out the windshield of the cemetery before looking back at me. "Are you sure you want to do this today?" I nodded without hesitation. "We've been keeping him around for longer than necessary." I could already tell some of the pack members are getting agitated. He nodded, then started the engine. Then to the crypt it is. Thane's grip on my hand was tight as he led us down the harrowing steps into the long corridor that led to where he was keeping Jake. His body was visibly tense and his jaw was set. I knew that it was no easy feat for him to walk in there and not want to rip Jake to pieces, but I had some questions for the murderer before he could die. Thane surprisingly pulled me into a hallway to the left instead of leading us to the giant silvered door that led to the imprisoned rogues. I suppose that made sense since he never wanted me to step inside that room filled with wild rogues again. This is typically where we keep our most dangerous threat, but since we haven't had a rogue in here for ages, we kept him in here instead, though he wouldn't be able to get out of a simple room under my guard's eyes. Thane explained with a menacing smirk as we stopped in front of a heavily guarded silver door that was protected by thick silver bars that were mounted to right side of the wall. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Luna. The 5 guards greeted us before stepping aside to let us through. Not letting go of my hand, Thane used his other to type an 8-digit code into a keypad on the wall before a screen above switched to some sort of scanner. He lowered his face closer to the screen before opening his right eye and allowing the green laser lights to scan his retina. Wow, I had no idea that the pack went to such measures to hold their hostages, and I thought the silver door with the other rogues were much. As soon as the high-tech security system analyzed the Ness retina, the large steel beams shifted back into the wall and allowed entry to the silver door. One of the guards stepped forward and unlocked the door with a set of keys before pushing it open with gloved hands. He handed something off to Thane, but I didn't catch what it was before Thane tucked it under his t-shirt. Before I could question what it was, Thane pulled me into the well-lit room behind him as I nodded at the guards in appreciation. As soon as I walked it, I was hit with the pungent smell of body odor, human feces, blood and stale food. Needless to say, I felt like vomiting. I looked around the inside of the room to see that it was made up of large grey concrete walls that were lined with silver bars that illustrated something like a jail cell. Even though the silver cowl didn't do our particularly human prisoner any harm, the space was substantial but held nothing except for a few fluorescent bulbs overhead, a single chair off to the left side of the room, and for guards who immediately left and closed the door behind them. Besides that, the only other thing was a chained-up Jake who sat on the floor opposite of where we stood. His clothes were torn to pieces, blood covered his skin, and he was slumped over. However, he didn't appear to be harmed in any way. There was paper plate of a half-eaten sandwich which appeared to be growing fungi from the looks of it. When the door shut, his sinister eyes looked up at us. It was only when I saw his face that I realized that someone got their hands on him. He had a black right eye from where someone must have punched him. There were dried blood under his nose and his lower lip was swollen red and split. Despite all this, he still managed to grin at us with an evil glint in his eyes. The way he smiled sent a chill of uneasiness down my spine and then a grip tightened on my hand. "IGS only trying to scare you," Thane sent an assuring mind linked to me. "Can't say I'm surprised to see you both alive." Jake coughed out. "This really is some magical shit town, isn't it?" I wrinkled my nose in disgust at his state. "A town you almost destroyed," I hissed through clenched teeth. "Semantics," he mocked as he lifted his right hand up to wave me off, but the chains attached to his wrist prevented him from completing the action. I felt the anger boiling within me as I glared at him. "You marched everyone here and now they're all dead." His expression quickly shifted to distaste and irritation. "Don't get it tied up, pumpkin. It was your dogs that killed all my men, most of which you've known your whole life, or did you forget? I don't know what made me do what I did next. Maybe it was him blaming the pack for what happened or him calling them dogs. But within a second, I released Thane's hand and stepped across the room until I smacked his across the face. My hand stung after I released that pent-up anger, but the look of pure shock and the red imprint of my hand across his face made it all worth it. I knelt down to his level on the ground as a small smile tugged on the edge of my lips. I pointed my index finger at him as I dropped my voice to a low menacing tone. "Don't you ever, and I mean never, blame my pack for what you caused. I must say you've grown a lot of balls since becoming a dog owner." Jake spat in rage. "Something you've never had." I heard Thane snicker behind me, but I kept my focus on the disgrace before me. Jake's jaw tense and his hands reflexively shot out to grab me, but the chains yanked his arms back as Thane released a feral growl and immediately had me pulled back to my feet and away from Jake. "I got this," I assured Thane as I looked back at Jake, whose eyes were plain on my small baby bump. "So you slept with the dog?" he accused, appalled. "Oh, but didn't you as well?" Thane asked rhetorically as he drew his eyebrows together in mock confusion. Jake's bloodshot eyes shifted to Thane. "As you can probably tell from my ex, I'm into flesh, not fur." Most admit it Emery and my sheets were. Before he could even finish that sentence, Thane punched him square in the jaw before pulling his fist back only to slam it into Jake's left eye. Hell, I should have done that instead of slapping him. Don't fucking talk about my wife like that. Thane fumed in anger. Why not? It's pretty fun seeing you all riled up. Jake grinned through his bloody face before he spat some blood out near the issue. Plus, it's not like I would have ever touched her anyways. Thane swung his fist again and I heard the telltale sign of Jake's nose breaking. But he just sat there and laughed as he tried and failed miserably to wipe off the blood from his nose. We have a few questions we'd like you to answer. Thane began, but Jake's laughter just got louder. I'm as good as dead anyways, dog, so you might as well just kill me and it over with because I'm not telling you anything. Jake grinned up at us. I knew he wouldn't have spoken this easily, which is why I had a trick up my sleeve. Tell him. I spoke up as my hands itched to drag Jake to hell. Tell him about who he's been sleeping with. Thane smirked as Jake's eyes grew weary. That girl you've been knocking around with. What's her name, Jake? His eyes flickered with an underlying fire as his body tensed up, and I knew that was his weakness. I walked over to the S side. Abigail, listen to it. I stated as I noticed Jake's jaw twitch. You don't know what you're talking about. Jake snapped rather hastily. Oh, pumpkin. I used the slimy endearment he always called me. Back at him. I'm afraid we know more about her than you do. Jake briskly scrambled up from his seat on the ground as he used the wall and his chains as support to keep him upright. I swear if you don't shut your mouth. Ill. You'll what? Put a bullet through me. Been there. Done that. Remember. Plus it isn't like you're in any position to make threats. I gestured to the enclosed room and his chains. He seemed to think that over as he reconsidered what he was about to say. She doesn't have anything to do with this. I swear. Jake stuttered like a fool in love. I turned to Thane as I threw on a good cop, bad cop act and rhetorically asked, Think he's telling the truth? Thane pretended to ponder my question as he looked at me. I don't exactly think so, love. Neither do I. I am. He yelled at us in a panic. Please, Emery. Listen to me. She hasn't done anything. She's a human from another state. Just leave her alone. Please. I gazed over at him with a smirk. Now you see we could, but I'm afraid we can't unless you tell us everything. Thane finished my sentence. I'm not telling you shit. He snarled. I rose my eyebrows in a questioning manner. Is that really what you're going to choose, Jake? Secrets over Abigail. You'll never get to her, he said with conviction. I turned to Thane, who took the lead. Well then I suppose we should just bring her in. Dead or alive is the question though. Thane shrugged in indifference. You're bluffing. He called us out. I turned to face him with a serious expression as I clicked my tongue against my teeth. Now, don't be so sure. Thane can bring in her head for you if you decide to be uncooperative. Her blonde hair and blue eyes would brighten up this room a bit. Thane mused. Jakes looked at me nervously and I shrugged. I suppose he has a point. The calm demeanor that he sported all throughout the conversation took a complete 180 turn as he tried to lurch for me. His hands were only centimeters away from my face before the chains tugged him back fiercely towards the wall. Then S hands protectively pushed me back a couple inches before he growled. You better start talking before I take Abigail apart piece by piece. I really hoped this idiot was going to talk because we didn't have Abigail anywhere in our possession. I tried to keep my confident stance intact as Jake looked at the both of us before peering down at his bruising wrists from the chain. If I talk, you'll leave her alone. Take her back to Fairburn. He pleaded. I quickly nodded. She'll be safe. And I honestly hoped that she would be wherever she ran off to. He looked defeated as his eyes avoided our gaze. Fine. What do you want to know? Before I could articulate my first question, Thane beat me to it. Did you ever love Emery? He probed with an edge to his voice. Jake and I were both taken aback by the off-topic question. You threatened my girlfriend's life to ask stupid questions. Jake was outraged as he glowered at Thane. Just answer the question. Thane goaded him. Jake theatrically rolled his eyes at us before he finally let in. I didn't. When we were in high school, I knew she would be a part of the ritual because of her age. We were always good friends, so I convinced her that we had a thing. I only dated her to gain her trust so that she would allow me to implant a tracking device in her arm. I didn't know she would have been taken, but it was worth a shot. I blinked at him slowly as I tried to process what he just admitted. You're psychotic. I can't believe you made me believe we loved each other just to chicken me. The anger burned bright within me. I wasn't angry that he never loved me. I was angry at the fact that he manipulated my emotions. What kind of person did that? Oh wait, Jake was that kind of person. I felt sick at his crazy revelation as I saw the knuckles telling white from the tight fist his hands were in. I reached out and took his left hand in between my own. It's a good thing I never loved you either. And it was true. Despite being with Jake, I had never felt even a fraction of what I felt for Thane. Clearly your tastes have lowered. Jake provoked. If you weren't already going to be dead, I would have bitten your head off already. Thane barked at him before he opened his fist and interlaced our fingers. All bark but no bite. Jake kept instigating the anger on. I held Ben's body in place before he beat Jake unconscious, and I cowled and asked my questions. Why do you do it, Jake? You must have known you would have lost the fight. I mused. Oh, now some interesting topics. Where you see Emery? The only thing that I knew would make me loose was if your man dog here lived. I knew I would have been able to shoot him, which I did. But I didn't exactly expect him to come back from the dead either. Maybe I should have shot him twice. Definitely a psycho. So you brought them all here knowing that there was a chance of them all dying. I knew you were insane, but Jake, you led them to their deathbeds. I hurled accusations at him. He said nothing as his gaze fixed on his feet. Then S body was rigid beside my own as his clipped tone caught Jake's attention. Was there anyone else in town who knew your plans? Jake didn't utter a sound, and Thane finally snapped. Answer the goddamn question before I drag Abigail in here. That quickly had Jake's mouth open and spewing words like a water fountain. I told the group of hunters to keep it quiet, but I'm sure they must have told their families. The only person I know of who didn't show up here and knew what was happening was my dad. Then something clicked. You spent your life trying to prove yourself to him. I reflectively murmured. You finally found the beast, and even to this day, he still thinks you're nothing but useless. Thane gave me a quizzical expression as Jake's eyes glowered at me. My father is nothing but a washed-up old hunter who couldn't do the simplest thing. Jake's tritone held an underlying iceberg of anger. I cleared my throat before I voiced my speculations. You and your father never got along, Jake. Everyone in town knew that. You may not have loved me back then, but you confided in me on more than one occasion. You always told me how your father thought you were going to be just another unsuccessful hunter. After a moment's reflection, I calmly stated the facts. That's why you did it. To prove him wrong. Of course you wanted the pack dead, but it was always more for you. You wanted the glory of being the beast slayer to the town and your father. My declaration made Jake acidly silent. That only proved that theory was indeed true. You gathered everyone to come here, and then your father must have said no. He must have thought that you were delusional for going after the beast after what happened to your grandfather. I mockingly laughed. You'd think that the hunters would have learnt that time. Your father would not be proud, Jake. He never wanted to hurt the beast, and you know that. He just wanted answers. He was the delusional one, thinking that he could just sit out on his porch until the beast walks along. Jake fumed. I found you guys out. I know everything that's been happening here. Stealing our women just to breed more monsters. He spat out in resentment. That only thing you've caused was death, Jake. Nothing else. The werewolves and the humans have lived in peace for centuries. No one needed your destructive heroism. I grumbled lowly. No one needed supernatural creatures to roam the earth either, but here we are. I ignored him as Thane questioned him. And what about Abigail? Did you tell her your plans? Yes, wait. His eyes shot daggers at us. I thought you said you had her. I looked at Thane in mock astonishment. Oh, did we say that? My bad. We were lying. Jake took a calculated step towards us again, but when the chain scrapped against the floor, he stopped his actions and looked at his wrists, which looked worse for wear. If you don't have her, then where is she? He inquired anxiously. We don't know. I answered him. His face contorted into a scared panic. What do you mean you don't know? Did you kill her? His question was directed at Thane. We didn't kill her. Thane sighed. My beta went to look for her, but she ran away from Fairburn before we reached there. We think she headed north. Was there anyone else in the house? He hastily asked no. Why was there supposed to be? Thane replied, and my curiosity piqued. My father was with her. My eyes flickered to Thane, whose eyebrows were furrowed. No one else was there. He must have left with her, though I don't know how he would have kept up. Thane grumbled in confusion. What do you mean keep up? She's pregnant. She would barely walk around on her own. Jake lifted his chain arms and attempted to grab at his hair in frustration, but the chains were preventing him from doing such. We knew she was the one to tell you everything about us. I whispered out as his frantic movements stopped and he peered over at me. How would you know that? You've never even met her. He reproached. I felt an evil sense of elation pass through me as mirth filled my eyes and I glanced at Jake. We've known her long before you have. Then S known his entire life. That sudden news made Jake walk back into the walk behind him. W. Were you trying to say? Haven't you been curious about how she knew everything about us? Thane wondered. Jake shook his head in denial. She's a werewolf. Jake, Abigail came from this pack. His words faltered. You're lying. She's human. She said she was a hunter like me. And you said I was the one sleeping with a dog. His angry eyes flickered to mine. If she's a part of the pack, then why did she help me get to you? Why was she here in the pack? Because she clearly never had respect or authority or her pack, so I kicked her out. Thane explained without remorse. Jake's body slid down the floor in what could only be described as self-loathing. I can't believe I slept with her. A dog. His face took on a pale complexion and appeared as if he needed to bath. Believe it because your time here is up. Thane informed him unceremoniously. Jake looked at the both of us with pleading eyes. Please. Don't do this. Emery, please. His crocodile tears definitely was going to help his case with me. He shot my mate and killed him. He brought hunters here who killed some of our pack. Jake had to pay his debt. Thane removed a black handgun from where it was tucked in the back of his pants, and I realized that that was what the guard passed on to him. He held the weapon out to me, and I gingerly picked it up and looked at the small contraption that held so much power. My mind was screaming at me to aim it at Jake and end his life, but my hands cowled in a movie. It refused to move. I couldn't kill someone. Not even Jake, who I so desperately wanted gone. I returned the gun to the S hand as an unsurprising and understanding look crossed his face. It's okay, sweetheart. Not everyone can bear it within themselves to end another person's life. No matter how despicable that person is. Thane assured her through mind link. I want you to do it. Archias always hated the beast, so I want you to show him just what he was so desperate to find and kill. I told him what to do. Are you sure about this? Thane asked quietly. I can't do it, and it's what needs to be done. I nodded as I kissed his cheek before turning to face Jake. You are a terrible man, Jake. You did nothing but destroy lives 2 weeks ago. Many families are going to be without their loved ones now. All because you wanted to kill the beast. Even your child with Abigail will be fatherless because you abandoned them for what? A stupid war that had nothing to do with you. A tear escaped Jake's eye as he pleaded one last time. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Please, I can fix this. My expression towards that man remained cold as I constantly remembered the lives he took not just from my pack but from my old hometown. The image of him shooting Thane and then attempting to kill me were all vividly fresh in my mind. I nodded at Thane, who walked to one corner of the room and shifted into his large black wolf with his piercing, glowing, ruby eyes. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. His voice broke and caught in his throat as then S-Wolf stalked over to face him. A grim smile tugged against my lips as Thane protruded his canines in front of Jake's face menacingly. Goodbye, Jake. I breathed. As the S canines tore into Jake's neck, I turned around and punched in the code to allow the door to open. As the heavy silver doors croaked open, Jake's piercing and agonizing screams filled the room and trickled out the door and into the hallways like music to every owner's ears. The pleased expression was still on my face as I walked out of the room. Chapter 38, Blood Moon Pack. I soaked in the afternoon sun and breathed in the blissful fresh scent of nature around me as I took in the silence. The leaves on the trees bristled with the gentle wind and the birds chirped merrily as I stood outside the crypt and waited for Thane to exit. After I left him with Jake's blood in his mouth and the scream of a hunter filling the underground building, I had to escape the narrow hallways. Once I stepped outside, it was like a blanket of peace covered the entire pack. The sorrows washed away, and our healing began as Jake was now permanently gone. Even the guards that were patrolling the exterior of the crypt visibly relaxed. Even though the pack was never in imminent danger when Jake was in the crypt, I could tell him being alive had everyone on edge. I remembered back when I first came to the crypt. My friend Atticus was the guard. I smiled at the memory of making a big tough werewolf allow me into the crypt despite the less orders. But now he was gone because of Jake. Talia, all the werewolves and the hunters that died was all because of Jake's ridiculous obsession with the beast. God only knows where our pregnant Abigail was off to and what would happen to the baby. Before I could contemplate her situation any further, Thane walked out of the crypt with fresh clothing. I closed the distance between us halfway as Thane met me in the middle and pulled me into his arms. I rested my forehead on his shoulder before I asked, "Is he dead?" She is gone, love." Thane placed a kiss on the top of my head. I pulled back and I looked at him, crinkling my nose in disgust. "I really hope you have a sink down in the crypt where you washed your mouth out before kissing me." He gave me a toothy smile, and from our close proximity I could smell the telltale sign of mint on his breath. Brushed and flossed, "Sweetheart." I placed my head back on his chest as I entwined my arms around his neck. "I feel at peace now." I sighed in contentment. "As do I. Safe to say there's no more threats in our distant future. That and I have you in my arms," he remarked. "And a baby on the way." I chimed in with a giggle. "Think we're ready to raise a kid." He pulled back to look at me and placed both his hands on my stomach, something he seemed to be doing quite often. "We're young, but there's not a doubt in my mind that we'll be the best that we can be. And we have an entire pack to help," he concluded cheekily. "We still need a name," I noted. "I'm sticking with Thor." "Then I'm sure you'll explain to Jane why you named her first great-grandchild after a comic book superhero." I snickered, his expression to that of horror. "You're right. She'll probably chase me around the house with her slipper." I laughed at the image. "I'm sure we'll come up with a great name." He nodded before he went serious. "What does Jake's father look like?" Then I remembered that he was still missing. "He kinda looks like an older version of Jake. Are you sure he isn't in Fairburn?" I questioned uncertainly. "I'm not sure, but I'll have Lucas sniff around town. But he may have left with Abigail if she's pregnant." She must have guessed that Jake led a suicide mission and decided to flee before we hunted her back to Fairburn. His face turned grim. "But didn't you say that Lucas only smelled Abigail's scent?" "He did, but Chess must have went through the forest while his father left by car. I have no idea, but I think we should search them out before they want revenge." He looked stressed. I cupped his cheeks between my palms. "Hey, we'll find them. They can't have gone that far if they want revenge. Everything will be fine as it's only two of them. Plus Abigail has a baby to protect. I want to hope that she wouldn't do anything to put her child at risk." Hesitantly, Thane nodded and relaxed. "You're right. The only thing we can do now is try to find them." I kissed his cheek. "Let's go home." His eyes twinkled with happiness as he took my left hand in his, and we made our way back to the pack house. On our walk back home, I couldn't help but smile at Thane. "Were you not going to remind me that today is your birthday?" I gazed at him. He turned to me with a playful smile. "I assumed you forgot." I held my chest in mock hurt. "I'm your wife. It's my duty to remember." "Then what did you get me, love?" He smirked knowingly. I smiled sheepishly at him before shifting my gaze to the path we were walking on. "Well, considering you've been stuck to me like glue for the past week and I was unconscious before that, I really didn't have time to get you anything." I saw him smile from my peripheral vision. "I know, sweetheart. But I have everything I need right here. He brought our entwined hands to his face and placed a gentle kiss on the back of my palm. I could bake you a cake. To my agent extraordinaire, Myelin Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He full-on burst into laughter at that one, and I gave him a glare. As much as I love you, I think I would pass on that. Hey, just because I can't cook doesn't mean I can't bake. I grumbled. My stomach may beg to differ. You're lucky I love you. I rolled my eyes at his comment. That I am. You know, since you'd be basically an old man now, you should let me drive you around instead of driving me. I winked at him. Old baby, I'm only 20. That basically 140 in dog years. Old but gold. He winked. Said no one ever. I reached over on my tiptoes and kissed his cheek. Happy birthday, baby. Is that all I get after you insult my age? He playfully squeezed my hand. Maybe if you're a good boy. I trailed off. I regret ever telling you I was a werewolf. Well, you got alive with it now. I laughed. Our playful banter continued until we reached the pack house where we were staying for the time being, since Thane wanted me as close to Dr. Adler as possible in case something happened. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My healing powers were back, so I didn't quite need a doctor to heal me. As soon as we reached our room, Thane had me pressed up against the door, minding my baby bump. With his lips fiercely on my own, I kissed him back with as much passion and love as I could muster, and when he started to unbutton my blouse, I pushed his hands away. I asked Adler if we could be together even though you're pregnant, and he said it was fine. Thane mumbled before he pressed his lips against his mark on my neck. It's not that. I managed to whisper out as my eyes rolled back in pleasure. Then, with stopping us, he asked, confused but still working his magic. I slapped some sense into myself and held his shoulders back so that he would stop. You're not making me think straight. That's the plan, love. I rolled my eyes at him. Firstly, we're in the pack house and that's weird. We could move it back to our house. He cut me off and grinned. Ignoring him, I continued. And secondly, you've practically been awake for 3 weeks. He shook his head. Not true. I've been napping. Keyword being napping and not sleeping. I pulled his face towards my own. I want you to sleep, and I mean shut off your brain and stop worrying about me or the pack for at least a few hours. But nothing. I can take care of myself and the pack on my own for a little while. Plus you've been taking care of me all this while, and now it's my turn to take care of you. His eyes softened at my words. At least stay with me. I quickly nodded my head and pulled us both to bed. He snuggled up to me with a smile on his lips and his eyes closed. Would I wake up? In finishing what I started, I giggled and placed a kiss on his forehead before lulling him to sleep. They knocked out pretty quickly since he was tired, and as soon as I was sure he was out cold, I unwrapped myself from his arms and tiptoed downstairs. I went straight to Bailey, who was in the kitchen. Bailey, I need your help. I grinned at her as she looked at me with a curious expression. A few hours later, Bailey and Lucas were walking out the door with the cake when I felt an anxiousness through our bond. I quickly started to sprint up the steps and met him halfway, running down with wide eyes and a frantic expression. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He panted out of breath as he pulled me to him. Hey, what's wrong? I asked him, unconcerned. But I woke up and didn't see you next to me. I panicked, he said, flustered. I was only downstairs with Bailey. In fine, Thane. I assured him. You need to stop worrying about me. Impossible, he muttered into my hair as he walked us back upstairs. When we reached the 3rd floor, I finally got a look at him and he looked considerably less tired. How was your sleep? I inquired. Refreshing. He grinned as he reached for me. Time for my present now. I stepped out of his reach and walked towards the bathroom. Not yet, birthday boy. In taking you out. I could hear him groan from behind me as he mumbled. I thought I was supposed to get what I wanted for my birthday. After we both got dressed, Thane in an unted shirt and jeans and myself in a flowy summer dress, we headed towards the Jeep. Where are we going? Thane wondered curiously as he headed towards the driver's side of the Jeep. In driving, and you'll know when we get there. I informed him. You're e-driving. He rose one of his eyebrows in uncertainty. Immer, good driver, Thane. Now relax and let me blindfold you. I held out a tie to cover his eyes. Blindfold. He looked at me dubiously. I laughed at his weary expression before I spun him around and adjusted the tie around his eyes. Don't let me fall. Also don't crash my Jeep. He faltered as I walked him towards the passenger side. You mean my Jeep and no promises? I smiled when he frowned. He successfully got into the Jeep and I buckled him up. I hopped in the driver's seat and quickly got us to our destination. Our house. If I had us walk there, then he would have easily figured it out. So I decided to drive us around a little before pulling up to our house. As I made my way around town and finally headed back to our house, Thane asked, "This trip is taking quite some time, sweetheart. Are you driving us to a different state?" Giggling, I gave him a vague answer. Maybe, maybe not. Finally pulling up to our house and with his eyes still concealed, I helped him out of the Jeep. Are you planning on pushing me off a cliff or leaving me alone in the woods? He queried. As he asked that, I accidentally forgot to tell him watch his step as we made our way up the 2 steps that led to the patio. He tripped on the lowest step and almost went flying face first to the ground before my grip tightened on his arm and I pulled him up. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I laughed unapologetically. Christ love. You were trying to kill me, he decided. I forgot to tell you. But there are a few steps. Sure you forgot. He made air quotes over the word before he grumbled and carefully walked up to the front door. I was both inside to the living room before I stepped behind him and untied his blindfold. He opened his eyes and initially held a look of shock before his eyes portrayed absolute happiness and contentment at seeing everyone standing around in our living room. Happy birthday, they all yelled. I had Bailey and helped me set up a little dinner for Thane since I knew he didn't want to be celebrating in a grand way after the war with the Hunters. But it was his first birthday with me, so I thought dinner with his parents, brothers, Lucy's, Boom, Caroline, Bailey and I would be a nice gesture. Before he greeted any of them, he turned towards me with a happy smile. You planned all of this? I nodded and pecked his lips. All for you, Alpha. Thank you, sweetheart. I love it. He hugged me before he pulled me further into the room with him as he thanked everyone. After we had dinner, I went into the kitchen to get the cake and light the candles before I brought it out. As soon as I set the cake down in front of Thane on the dining table, he gave me a playful smile and asked, "You didn't bake it, did you?" I not so gently tapped him behind his head, to which Bo burst out laughing. Bailey actually helped me make it. I informed him. Thank the moon goddess. He winked at me. I rolled my eyes at him before we sang him happy birthday. After I fed him a piece of cake, he pulled me onto him lap before giving me a chocolatey kiss and whispered, "Thank you for this, Emery. All of it. Even the cake. Happy birthday, Thane." I hugged him. Now, time for my birthday present. He raised his eyebrows with a playful smile, and however overheard and asked, "Oh, what did you get him, Emery?" My eyes widened in panic as I looked at Thane. "It's a surprise." Thane answered for us as my cheeks turned rosy red. For months later. Don't worry, Em. This only hurts a lot. Bailey gave me a weary smile as I glared at her when another contraction hit me. My water broke a few hours ago, and now my contractions were getting closer. I knew it was almost time for our little baby P to enter this world. Thane had our room in our house set up so that I could deliver our baby at home. Therefore I was currently laying on the bed as Dr. Adler and unprepared everything for the baby. Thane was holding my hand in a gesture of comfort as he looked excited and nervous at the same time. Bailey, on the other hand, who had given birth to her surprise twins, Penelope and Samuel, a month ago, was trying but failing miserably at easing my mind. "You're really not helping her, Bailey," Thane grunted with a hint of anger lacing his voice. Well, I'm not going to lie to her. She grimaced. And this is the moment I regret getting pregnant. A 1-month-along, Caroline said as she walked through the door. You all are not helping the situation, I voiced as the contraction eased up. Thane stood up and gestured to the door. Okay, you too. Out what? But I just got here. Caroline wind. Out, Thane repeated and sent them away. Thanks for that. I managed a small smile. How are you feeling? He asked in concern. Besides all the pain. I questioned. Just fine. Thanks for asking. He rolled his eyes at my answer as he took his seat. Really, sweetheart. Tell me, how are you feeling? Scared. I whispered. We have an undadder here. You and the baby will be fine. He assured me. Not that. I'm scared I wouldn't be a good mother. I admitted. Thane looked at me as if I had grown to hits. That's absurd. You're going to be the best mom there is, and I know that for a fact. Thane stated with confidence. I smiled at him before I felt a sudden pain and urge to push. I gave him a look of panic before I looked over at Dr. Adler. I think the baby is ready, Doc. Adler and Ed rushed over as they checked how dilated the cervix was and concurring that it was time to start pushing. Thane wanted to be here and help deliver the baby, so he was already adorned in his scrubs. And talked me through the entire process while Thane kept telling me to be strong and that I could do this. Thane held one of my hand in between both of his and told me to start pushing. It pained immensely and I thought I would pass out from all the pain. I took deep breaths and pushed with my life and told me to give one last push. I groaned in pain as I gave one last push, and then I heard the cries of my baby. But that was the only sound. I heard them all gasp as I held the baby, and Adler cut the umbilical cord before taking him to the table beyond my sight to clean him up. What's wrong? I asked as concern filled me, and Thane walked over to our baby. Is the baby all right? When no one answered me, I started to panic as my heart raced with worry. Thane. What's wrong? He appeared before me with the baby wrapped in a blanket in his arms and an amazed expression on his face. Nothing's wrong. Then why are you all quiet? Is our son all right? That's the thing, love. We don't have a son. He finally looked up at me in wonder. We have a daughter. A daughter? I questioned in confusion in my tired state. It was possible. Every alpha has been a male since. Well, since forever in the Blood Moon pack. So what changed now? But as I contemplated how we hadn't known before, I remembered that every time we did an ultrasound, the baby was never positioned for Adler to see the gender, and we all just assumed it was a boy. But a girl. Never in our wildest dreams did we expect the tradition to suddenly change. Do you want to hold her? Thane asked, even though I could tell he wanted nothing more than to hang on to his baby girl. More than anything, I reached out as Thane gently placed our daughter in my arms. I peered down at her tiny face that had stopped crying once she was in the nurse's arms. I finally saw her little face, her little hands and her cute little button nose. She was the imprint of Thane with brown, chocolate eyes and wavy brown hair. She was beautiful and magnificent. She was our daughter, her firstborn. My eyes welled up with tears. Thane pulled the chair closer to the bed and held a tiny hand between his thumb and index finger. She's ours. Thane smiled with tears in his eyes as well. Our little girl. I grinned. She's perfect. Just like her mom, Thane said as he kissed my forehead. You were so brave and incredible throughout your pregnancy, love. You were amazing. I turned to him with a huge grin. Thank you for helping. I have a granddaughter. And squealed. What are you going to name her? Adler asked with a smile. I looked at Thane worriedly because we only had a boy name kicked out and I had no idea what to name our little angel. How about Everett? Thane suggested with a smile. Ev for short. Everett. I tested out and smiled at how perfect it suited her. I love it. What about a middle name? And asked, and I instantly knew. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. That's my sister's name, I added because it was the only way I could be close to her. Ever Avery Blackwood. Thane declared. Our future alpha of the Blood Moon Pact. I grinned at him and he smiled back at me and our daughter. I could tell that everything was about to change with this little angel on our hands. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Logan. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. 5 years later, it's been 5 years since our little girl was born. Today was our little Everett's 5th birthday, and my little angel was somewhere with her dad while Bailey, Caroline, Maria and I all prepped my backyard for her birthday party. I can't believe our babies are already 5. Maria squealed. Maria had her son Finnick 2 months before I had ever read, and we just sort of bonded over motherhood with Bailey and Caroline. Caroline's daughter, Charlotte, was still 4 years old, however, since she was 4 months younger than Everett. Caroline also had another kid a year after, a son named Connor, with her mate Beau. Marius' mate died the day of the war, so she's been a single mother ever since. I could only imagine how much pain she was in throughout the years because I knew the pain she felt when she lost her mate. It was exactly what I felt when Thane died that day Jake attacked. But I was lucky that Thane came back alive, or else I didn't know what I would have done. However, that was in the past now. I've learned to forgive myself and come to terms with the fact that Jake was the person to blame for all of it. Bailey also had another kid, Lee, who only had a year, so she has 3 in total. Penelope. Samuel and Leah, on the other hand, was expecting my second. Now 4 months pregnant. Thane and I decided to slow down and catch our breaths after Everett was born, since our first year was rushed. But we both really wanted another since Ev was growing up. Just as I had the tables laid out, everyone started to show up. Hey darling, and greeted me with a huey. I smiled at her and Carson, who looked to be carrying a mountain load of gifts. Carson and Thane have both been spoiling little Evan, while it was amusing to see them both wrapped around her finger. I wanted Ev to grow up humble and appreciative of the small things in life. The Nestor brothers, who were now both 13, also showed up. Hey Emery, they called over before heading straight for the dessert table. They'd have been like protective brothers to Evan. It was the sweetest thing to see. It was truly a tight-knit family, and I couldn't be happier. After all the kids, Lucas and Beau showed up. I mind-linked Thane to bring our birthday girl out. In no time, I saw my little girl dressed in her yellow floral dress, running into the backyard with a huge grin on her face. She bounded straight into my open arms. Happy birthday, sweetie. I peppered her with kisses all over face, and she fully hid her face in my neck as she giggled. Thank you, Mommy. She kissed my cheek before running off to join the other kids. Thane wrapped an arm around my shoulder as he watched our baby playing. Can you believe she's already 5 years old? I know it felt like just yesterday we were holding her all swaddled up in our arms. I smiled up at him. He nodded and placed his hands on my growing stomach. And how's my other little girl? As fine as she was when you asked me this morning. I laughed. That's right. We were officially having another girl after Adler confirmed her gender. Everett will of course be alpha, since she was the firstborn and will be old enough when the next ritual comes around. At first it worried us a bit about how we were going to have the humans in Fairburn adapt to the changes of having males at the ritual instead of females. But luckily for us, Jane took care of everything. Surprisingly, she said the humans took it pretty well, since they always thought it was a bit sexist to dress women up and throw them to the beast. Which, mind you, they were the ones to add the rule of dressing the girls up, which is exactly what I've been saying my entire existence. However, I'm not saying that putting males in the situation was any better, but at least now the leader of our pack was going to be a female for the first time. And I must say, I was pretty proud it was going to be my daughter. Also Caroline and B.A.'s daughter, Charlotte, was going to be the Delta and our future head warrior when she takes over from her dad. Even the Beta will be Lucas and Bailey's daughter Penelope. The Blood Moon Pack's future was female. I could feel her kicking. Thane said, pulling me out of my reverie. And I felt her too, pounding on my stomach. She responds the most when you're around. Thane grinned at that declaration. She's going to be another daddy's girl. Not going to happen. I shook my head. You already have it, following your every footsteps. This baby is mine. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Logan. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Thane pecked my lips with a smile. EWWW, no PDA guys. There are kids here. Bailey playfully scolded us as she covered Lay's eyes, who she held in her arms. I'll be sure to remind you of that when I see you with Lucas. Thane retaliated with a laugh. Bailey was about to have a retort when we saw Finnick holding Everett's hand and running over to us with tears running down her cheeks. Thane instantly had her in his arms with worry-filled eyes. "What's wrong, princess?" he asked her even though he was already checking her. I fell down. She pointed to her knee where a little scratch laid. "Oh baby, let me fix you up." I kissed her tiny little leg before I touched her knee and had her healed in seconds. For the last 5 years I've been practicing with my healing more. I even discovered some ways to retain my energy without wearing myself out. "Is she going to be all right, Auntie Em?" little Finnick asked in concern. I knelt to his level. "She'll be just fine, Finn. Why don't you go back to play and I'm sure she'll join you in a minute." Finnick looked up at Ev worriedly before he hesitantly mumbled, "Okay," before running off. I smiled at him before returning to my angel and kissing her cute but nose as she wiped her tears away and hanged on to her dad a little longer. "I think little Finn has a crush on our baby girl." I smirked at a horrified Thane. "One, no boys are getting within an inch of my princess until she's like 30 and secondly she'll have a human mate," he grumbled, nodding. "To my agent extraordinaire, Myron Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "You're right, but it's still adorable to see. No boys." Thane grunted and hugged Ev a little closer to his chest. I was about to go get Everett a sweet treat when I spotted Bo gorging on the cupcakes I laid out for the kids. I walked over to him ready to scold him, but as I opened my mouth, he stuffed a cupcake in it, so I wasn't able to argue. "These are really great." He laughed at me as I glared at him while chewing the cupcake until my mouth was empty. "Though, these are for the kids. Also that was very nice. But I am a kitten that was funny. See, even little Ev is laughing." He pointed behind me, and I looked over to see Everett and Thane laughing at my frosting-covered mouth. I cowed and helped the smile on my face before I turned back to Bo with a scold. "Bo, I'm sorry to say, but you seem to be putting on a few extra pounds, if you know what I mean." I grabbed an napkin and wiped my face as his eyes opened, and he looked at his shirt-covered ABS. Not." "Oh, but Emery's right, babe." Caroline joined with a smirk. "See, I knew it was just me." I wrapped my arm through Caroline's as she sided with me. "Imperfectly fit." Bo tried to reason as he discreetly stepped away from the cupcakes. "If perfectly fit means a little tummy then." Caroline trailed off with a wicked smile as she toyed with her mate. "The vegetables are on that table." I pointed behind him and he quickly dashed off towards the carrots. Caroline and I couldn't help but break out in laughter at Bo. After chasing Bo away from the cupcakes, I grabbed some cold ice pops for the kids and brought the last one over to Ev, who was happily laughing with her dad. Thane always had a way to make her smile no matter what, and it warmed my heart to see them both bond. I sat down next to them and Ev hopped over in my lap as I opened her ice spot for her. Thane looked at me with pure love and adoration as he said, "I love you. I love you too." I kissed his cheek. I smiled down at my little girl, my growing baby and my mate, as I felt completely at home with them. All my family was in one place and I couldn't ask for anything more. I never expected the ritual to the beast to change my life so drastically for the better. But to my surprise, had I not been forced to sit in the forest that night under the blood moon, I would have never met my soulmate. I glanced back at him and couldn't help but think that whatever came our way, good or bad, we would be able to handle it. The end bonus chapter at Christmas. He sprang to his sleigh. To his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." I finished up reading The Class 'Twas the Night Before Christmas by Clement Clark Moore as Everett drifted to sleep. It was the night before Christmas and she insisted I read her the story twice before she fell asleep after exhausting herself from helping her dad and grandma in the kitchen all day. Setting the book aside, I gave a kiss on her forehead before quietly walking out and bumping into Thane. "Geez, you scared the jingle bells out of me," I quietly exclaimed. Grinning at me, he wrapped me in his arms. "Is she finally asleep?" She fell asleep in the middle of the second reading. "How about Tay?" I asked about our 3-month-old bundle of joy. Fell asleep in my arms as she finished her bottle. He led us down the staircase. "Time to wrap presents." I narrowed my eyes at him. "No, we finished yesterday." He chuckled nervously as we reached the living room and I saw the pile of new gifts laying room. Groaning, I stared at exasperated. "Thane, we've talked about this. Everett has every toy under the sun, most of which she doesn't play with, and you keep filling our already crowded house with more." "Not too." He silenced me with a deep kiss and I momentarily forgot what I was ranting over. "Relax, love. I got you an even better present." Frowning. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Noban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "But I don't need anything." Pulling me to the couch and sitting me on his lap, he grabbed the presents over to us. "Let's just get this done so I could show you. But it's not Christmas yet. Then call it an early gift." "I don't want an early gift. You'll want this one." I raised a brow. "How are you so sure?" "Trust me. I know." His voice took a low drawl that sent a shiver down my spine. "Fine." I conceded. "But tomorrow you better clean up all this wrapping paper." Chuckling, he agreed and I slid off his lap as we got to work. A new bike for Everett. Dozens of cute onesies for Taylin and everything and anything else in between. "Did you get all the gifts for the other kids in the pack?" I asked, since it was a running tradition every year. The Alpha and Luli go around the pack in a sleigh pulled by a truck and hand out gifts to the other kids. It was magical as everyone cradled their hot cocoa and turned on the lights that decorated their houses. Everett always joins us on the sleigh and this year will be our first with baby Taylin, all ready and packed up in the sleigh out front. He answered as he the last bat a Taylin-S baby toy. "Time to get your present." "Be right back," he said as he dropped a kiss on my head and dashed towards our room. "What the heck did you get?" I called from the living room. "It's a surprise," he responded. I sat patiently until I heard his heavy footsteps approaching. Slowly getting up, I turned around and cowed and stopped the loud laugh that bubbled up within me and escaped my lips in a loud giggle. I felt tears spring into my ears from the extent to which I was laughing at the Santa outfit. Oh, not just any Santa costume. It was a sexy Santa costume. "Stop laughing, Mrs. Claus. This is all for you." He smirked as he pulled his Santa jacket open and revealed his bare ABS and the suspenders that held up his pants. "I can't," I continued with my fit of laughter. "Why does that even exist? Santa is wholesome. I thought you'd like it." He seemed unsure of himself and sobered up and walked towards him. It definitely gave me a good laugh, but I must admit it does have its perks. I bit my lip as I ran my hand over his shoulders. "Since it's been 3 months that you tail in, I thought maybe it'd surprise you and see where we go from there." He placed a kiss on my nose. "Only if you're ready." To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Noban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I thought this was your costume for tomorrow's sleigh ride. Very funny, sweetheart. He lifted his left hand above our heads and his right hand snaked around my waist and pulled me flush against him. "Now let me kiss you and take care of you." I looked up and saw him holding a mistletoe above our heads. Truthfully, I had a similar surprise for him when we went to bed, but I think I like his costume better. Leaning up on my tiptoes, I pressed my lips against his soft ones and felt his stubble scrape against my skin. As I wrapped my arms around his neck and pulled him further into me, I heard a small gasp, immediately pushing away from Thane. My eyes to little Everett, who stared at us in shock. "Mommy, why are you kissing Santa Claus?" Her small voice traveled over to me from the staircase. I stood there in a silent panic as I realized that Ben's back was to her, so she didn't know it was him under the costume and hat. "Take her upstairs and you'll sneak back in through the back." Thane mind-linked me before he dashed off and out the front door. I quickly walked to Everett, but she made a beeline and followed her dad outside. She pushed open the front door despite my protests, and we stood on the steps as the cold air bit through our clothes. Thane was gone, but his Santa outfit was shredded to pieces from when he shifted. Ev peered up at me with questioning eyes. "Mummy's Santa is a wolfie like us." I smiled down at her and picked her up. "You know what? I think he might be." "Then why did he leave his sleigh behind?" she questioned as she pointed to the sleigh of gifts parked in the yard. You know what, sweetie. I'm sure the Reanders will come back and take it to him," I assured her as I walked us back inside and up the stairs. "But why were you kissing Santa?" she demanded. "I'm so going to tell Daddy." I was just thanking Santa for the gift. I tried as I hugged her small body closer to mine before we reached her room, and I sat down on the bed. She climbed across me and settled down against her pillows. "But Mummy, you should have just said thank you or gave him a huge. Kisses are only for Daddy. Tay and me." The kid was way too clever, and I was failing. There was no way I could tell her it was Thane and not Santa. Then she'd know Santa isn't real, and what's the fun in that? "You're right, baby girl. I should not have kissed him." I agreed. She nodded. "Tu m'as agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilbay. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "Pinky PTW means you won't do it again." I wrapped my pinky around her small little finger and promised her. "No more kissing Santa." A soft knock came on the door before Thane walked in, dressed and sporting a grin. "I'm so going to kill you later." I shot at him and he chuckled. "Why are you up so late, little bean?" Thane asked Ev as he sat next to me, and she climbed into his arms. "Mommy kissed Santa Claus." She ratted on me. "Everett." I playfully scolded her. That S facial expression hardened, but his eyes held laughter as he growled. "Mommy did what now?" "Shiki, I think he heard you." "Sweetie." I cut her off. "You kissed Santa?" Thane asked as he sniffled and covered his eyes. "How could you anyway?" This man was turning into a drama queen as the seconds ticked by. Worst of all, I didn't know what to say. Eve's giggles cut off and S acting as she gave us a mischievous smile. "Why are you laughing at my pain, kid?" Thane asked as he brushed a fake tear away. "I knew it was you, Daddy." She giggled. My eyes flew to then S, and he was already looking at me, as we shared a baffled look. I didn't know how she knew, but I was going to let her think Santa was real. "Not on my watch." I immediately jumped in to save her childhood imagination. "No, it was Daddy. It really was Santa." She brushed me off. I used my sniffer. I rose a brow in question and she pointed to her nose. "I smelt Daddy's scent when we walked outside. Plus Santa is not a werewolf." She folded her arms and grinned like she just solved a mystery. "You're a smart little cookie," Thane said before tickling her. "Now it's time to go back to bed." After her giggles, she nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, because if I'm awake when the real Santa gets here, then he may not leave my toys." "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilbay. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." I bobbed her nose. "Now say goodnight and let us tuck you in." She snuggled into her blanket and Thane and I both gave her a kiss on her forehead. "Good night, Mommy and Daddy." She gave us a precious smile. "Good night, sweetie," we tell her before leaving her be. When we made it downstairs, I glared daggers at Thane. "Santa is leaving coals for you this Christmas." He wrapped his arms around me and smiled. "Hey, I'm Santa here, and while the costume may be ruined, I think we can still have some fun." I waved my finger at him. "Absolutely not. Ev might come back down looking for Santa again. We both know if that's why she was coming down here." He frowned. "Then an early morning gift exchange for us." "Nope. I did have a gift for you, including stocking and a warm fireplace for you to bundle up. But not today." I smirked as I walked to our bedroom. "But it's Christmas," he grumbled from behind me.